Hey everybody, welcome to the Caught by Happy podcast. Today on the show, I'm speaking with Rebecca Britt. Rebecca started an organization called Stable Moments, and I was going to try to explain it to you, but I really don't think I can. It really comes out better in her words. I'll give you a couple of hints though. It involves horses, it involves natural horsemanship, it involves helping foster and adopted children who have been through some sort of neglect or trauma. It's all about giving these kids the support and the mentorship that they so desperately need. And she does it in a way that combines her love and knowledge of horses with her background in social work. And Rebecca's been through some shit too. You're going to hear from her about some trauma and abuse that she herself had gone through as a young girl, and then the path of destruction that she inevitably ended up on. She was using drugs, she was drinking, she was dating men much older than her, but spoiler alert, she's all good now. She's clean and sober. She's got this organization, and she's helping kids that are in need of some guidance and some mentorship, which is really what it's all about. Ah, yes, it's a very special episode of the Caught by Happy podcast today. No, I think you'll pull out some little nuggets of inspiration and maybe some motivation and some wisdom for whatever it is that you're going through in your own life. And of course, starting a business is not easy. So you'll hear a little bit from her about what she went through to get her organization off the ground. There may have been some friendships that got broken up along the way. You'll hear all about that. She's gone through it. She's been through the ringer, but she's come through it stronger and more focused than she was before. So we're going to talk to Rebecca in just a minute. Hey, when's the last time you've updated your comforter? Yes, I'm talking about the comforter that's on your bed. Most people just kind of have them. They're there. They maybe wash them every once in a while, but when's the last time you bought a new one? If you haven't had a new comforter in a while, you're really missing out. You should try the Buffy comforter. They are made with 100% eucalyptus fiber, naturally soft, more earth-friendly than cotton. They're hypoallergenic and resistant to dust and mites and mold, and they keep you cool and comfy and snuggly all night long. The great thing about the Buffy comforter is that you can try it in your home right now for free for 7 days, no risk. You don't like it, return it, and you'll only be charged if you choose to keep it. Make sure you use the link in my show notes if you want to try it out. Doing so lets them know that I sent you, and it gives me a little bit of a kickback so I can earn something to keep this podcast on the air. All right, so Buffy super soft eucalyptus fiber comforters. Give them a try and let me know what you think. All right, back to Rebecca. So I don't really know her, but she is a fellow podcaster, and I thought the story sounded pretty interesting, so I wanted to have her on so she could share that story with my listeners. I gotta say, though, Skype sucks. So for any podcaster out there, and this is really just for you podcasting nerds who are thinking about starting up and they want to do it on the cheap, sometimes you got to pay some money. Skype sucks. I'm going to upgrade my calling capabilities. I'm either going to use Zoom or Squadcast. My next interview is actually a remote as well, and I want to make sure that I don't have the same problems with that one that I did with this one. Now, this one, you're going to hear some weird digitization of voices, which is really annoying, but you're also, and I tried to mitigate this as best I could, the voice drops out quite a bit, and I lost seconds of what she was saying at multiple times throughout this conversation. So I tried to edit and piece it together as best I could, but you're going to hear some of those funky edits in there, and it's going to sound like we jump around a little bit. I blame Skype. Skype sucks. I'm not using it anymore. Skype, don't sue me. But when you use something for free, you get what you pay for. Hopefully my next remote interview will sound worlds better. All right, enough of the rants about Skype. Here we are, Rebecca Britt, Stable Moments. Check out her podcast if you can as well. It's called the Stable Moments Podcast. And of course, her website is stablemoments.com. Here's my conversation with Rebecca. You kind of reached out to me and I got back to you. You seem like you have a pretty interesting story. And why don't you just go ahead and tell me, what do you do right now?
I have a couple of jobs. So I am full-time education and engagement director. I do that full-time, but I've also grown a business called Stable Moments. And Stable Moments is a mentorship program that matches foster and adopted children up with community mentors. And as the program was built initially and still runs to this day, it utilizes equine assisted learning courses.
Equine assisted learning. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they had to get away from like the therapy word, which is like equine therapy, which is what everybody knows. And equine therapy in general has been on the rise, just like very traditionally for kids with like cerebral palsy or autism. And then most recently, it's had huge benefits for veterans and PTSD. I'm the only one that has carved out the niche of foster and adopted children to use equines with.
Okay.
So yeah, that's equine assisted learning. And I run my business and I do my day job. Yep.
Okay, cool. I want to get into how you got into your business, Stable Moments. So let's just go back to where you grew up. I think you're in Florida now, right?
Are you from Florida? No. So I'm born and raised in Vermont, and I'm proud of that. I guess people are always proud of like where they come from, but I love Vermont. I feel like it's a neat place to say you're from. I grew up in like a traditional suburban Vermont household. My family would pass this horse farm when I was a little girl, and I was told like from the time I was 3 years old, I was asking for horse lessons, which I mean isn't that unique. Every little girl wants a pony, right? But I was wanting to go to these lessons. My parents didn't get them for me. They're like, okay, whatever. Every little girl wants a pony. Like, you're not doing that. But I ended up like totally rebellious self, like got off the school bus. Well, I'll just go here on my own. Like I have my own transportation of this school bus and I'll just get off here. So my parents started paying for lessons for me.
So you wouldn't just like run away and do it.
Yeah. I mean, at some point you realize I could make this happen. And, I think a lot of my story and how I've made a lot of things happen has been that like little girl that's like, I could just get off the school bus here. So It's part of my personality. I started riding horses then and totally fell in love with it. And I did have a problematic childhood. I had some sexual trauma that happened to me at 12 and then again at 13. And it just like changed my dynamic of what the world was. And even like the community knew. It's very small knit communities. They knew, and you become like this girl.
You're saying that the community knew about the trauma that you had gone through? Wow.
Yeah. So they knew because it's a small knit community in one of the instances, and they knew in the other instance because it was a teacher. So it was like big headline news that like this, 42-year-old teacher, is doing inappropriate stuff with one of his students. So it ended up being like, this 3-year trial. It was big news in my little community, and I was the girl at the center of it,
I don't mean to pry into it at all, but like, did he have multiple victims or was it just you? Or
yeah, so he had a victim that he told me about a year prior. He had said something like she was going to try to get me in trouble, so I had another student beat her up. And like he had bought like wine coolers for this other student so that she would beat up this student that was about to like out him. Later on down the road, I found out that he had cases in Ohio, and I don't know how the background checks are done nowadays or if they're done per state or whatever, but he had pending charges in other states. And that's pretty typical of predators to like bounce around, obviously. I try to stay super objective, like with the whole Me Too movement and stuff, but I do feel like I know firsthand what it's like to feel blamed as a victim, even as a 13-year-old. And a 43-year-old man. It's amazing how quickly, like a community, they very quickly want to blame the victim. I think it's pretty natural for whatever reason.
Did you have to testify?
Oh, yeah. And actually, he got not guilty. So this is another thing is like, talk about like learning. I thought you go into this trial and you tell the truth and justice is served. Like, I just didn't realize like burden of proof, what circumstantial meant. And he said, she said, and like, that had the school done it right. So I went to the school when I reported it and they protected themselves. So they didn't want this to get out. So they gave him like a week before like he was removed from the school. Like it was this and they kept me home. Like it was this really weird thing. Now I had learned after, had I gone to the police, they would have had a call between me and him to kind of have a recording of something that was inappropriate. They would have like collected my clothes that would have his DNA on it. Right. So there would have been things that they would have done to shore up that case that like just didn't happen because I told the school. Learning all those things like you're supposed to tell this person and these people aren't going to have your best interest. They're going to try to protect themselves and people don't really want to talk about that. And we want to make it careful. Yeah.
And how were your parents during all of this?
Well, my mom worked at the school. So this was a co-worker essentially of hers. She was like, I'm surprised. She was really surprised. My dad like wasn't a typical like super protective dad. So he was like, okay, we'll deal with this. I totally went down like a bad path. I gave up, which is weird because I say I gave up, but like I got A's and B's in school, I totally started hanging out with a bad crowd. And
I can't even imagine what your sense of justice must have been after going through the entire court process and then learning that there were these other steps that you should have taken, like going to the police, and then the guy gets off not guilty.
And like his church paid for his defense. Like there was just so many things that like I hate that my advice would almost be to a girl in my position, like think about it before you tell. If I could have gone back, I probably would have just isolated myself from him the best I could and kept it moving. Because how the community reacted to me and the 3-hour trial of depositions with pages, just little details in the trial, they were like, was it an A day or a B day? Was it 11:45 or was it? There's just so many details that like his defense attorney was trying to get me to like slip up on. And I totally get maybe you don't want to go there.
I mean, honestly, would you really tell somebody to not speak up if that happened to them?
As a social worker, I would tell parents, we need to report this, but we need to put supports in place for this kid because she's about to have to be like a hero and despised for some reason by people in the community. She's going to have to relive this now for the next 3 years.
Is that how long the trial lasted? The whole ordeal? 3 years?
Yeah. And I would have been better off personally if I didn't tell. So if I care about every other kid in the world, then yeah, you should tell. But boy, no child should have to care about every other kid in the world, you know? They shouldn't have to carry that burden of like, I need to out you and I need to be the one that takes you down. And then like, even if she does, it's not guilty. And I get this is just my experience. Of course you should tell. I think that you would hear a lot of victims say that after reporting was just as traumatizing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a 3-year-long ordeal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk about this for a while, but let's get into, you're 16 now, I guess, at the end of all of this. And you said you started going down the wrong path. Tell me about that wrong path.
I'm going down the wrong path. And the wrong path was like wrong people, you know, drugs, older boyfriends, like boyfriends I shouldn't have been with, hanging out with those crowds, growing up way too fast. Parents didn't really know how to deal with that because they're like, okay, here's this good kid, but she's had this trauma, so she's doing all this stuff. So they didn't intervene like they would if I was just being a rebellious kid. They had a lot more like sensitivity around trauma that had happened. But in that, they really didn't protect me much from the choices I was making. The things that I was doing, I'm like, oh my God, like I would never let my kid at 14 be out till 3 a.m. with a 22-year-old dude.
Oh my God. Did you recognize back then that you were kind of messing up some stuff and you were doing the wrong thing?
I knew that it wasn't right. For whatever reason, like I went to school and I didn't let my grades fall. But like, I was doing drugs. I was staying out. I think I got to a point where I was like, nobody cares. The community thinks I'm a piece of shit and I'm that girl and my parents aren't stopping this. I think I was like, let's see how far we can take it. Like, I think it was kind of a cry for help. And the cry for help was like, I'm just going to keep getting crazier until somebody intervenes. The problem with that is if nobody intervenes, you just become more destructive. The one thing my parents did do was buy me a horse. They knew that riding was really helpful for me. And so they bought me a horse when I was 13 right away and gave me this outlet. And the barn was this place for me that I wasn't that girl. I wasn't my trauma. Like I totally was able to be myself. And horses have this, you come in with baggage, like they hold it for you and they're intuitive. And I feel like that horse kept me alive. And like, even that horse, I was flying over big jumps. He was off the racetrack. Like we flew through fields where my dad was like, oh my God, she's going to die. But being able to kind of be reckless and partnering with this animal, like it just felt more relatable than people were at that point. Like I had kind of given up on people.
How much time were you spending at the barn with the horse once you said you were 13 when you got the horse? Because you just pour all of yourself into being there with the horse?
Yeah. So I think I had to help pay for the boarding of the horse. So like I would do chores on the weekends and in the morning to be able to cover some of my board. I was still messing up. Like I was still going out partying and stuff like that. But the horse remained like a constant outlet for me of like something that felt wholesome. and something that kept my self-worth at some level because I was good at it. I was good at riding. I excelled at it. I think that was important to have something that I felt like gave me purpose and that I was good at. And
what was the horse's name?
Binger, Binger, Binger.
Okay.
So he introduced me to horses off the racetrack, but I loved that personality. Like I saw me as this little, like starting to be a kid with a chip on her shoulder. And I see these horses coming off the racetrack that have been like pushed to race and need some love and to be rehabilitated. There was something about that dynamic that I really loved. I wanted to learn like how you train horses. I wanted to be a horse trainer, but lessons on how to become a horse trainer didn't really exist in my area. It was more like how to ride. Back then, there wasn't really YouTube, but I ordered some books off eBay about natural horsemanship. And I literally went with a boyfriend that was way too old for me to the like back track of a racetrack in Finger Lake, New York. And I was like, I've got $1,000 and like loaded up my first thoroughbred off the racetrack, brought it home, and it was my project. And so I really learned how to use natural horsemanship to train horses. And natural horsemanship is like partnering with the horse using their herd psychology. They used to break horses, like they would tie them up or beat them or do all those dominance things to make horses do what we want them to do. That's like the cowboy way. Natural horsemanship is more like you actually use their herd psychology and you learn that they're like flight animals or prey animals and you partner with them to get the desired results. So it's a much more like gentle way of training. We're predators. We're predator animals. We fight for our food. Horses eat grass, so they're flight animals, so they run whenever there's a threat. We naturally want to just capture and train them. To them, we look like predators. Even they say like throwing a saddle on a horse is very much like a lion, like grabbing a zebra's back. Yeah. There's a lot of things that we do that are just very predatory. Even having an agenda, like you're going to do this, this, and this for me is very predatory. It teaches you how to be open and curious.
Yeah. How did you learn, would you call it natural horsemanship?
Pirelli happens to be like one of the bigger players in the field of natural horsemanship. And so I found his step 1, step 2, step 3, like box curriculum guides on eBay. So I bought those guides and they had DVDs and little cards on what to do. And it was a whole little like kit that you got to do your natural horsemanship. So that's how I started off with that.
It's interesting to me because knowing a little bit about your backstory and the trauma that you went through, you kind of turn yourself into a prey animal yourself.
Yeah, totally. It's crazy how everything's connected. I ended up after that, I kept horses were in my life. I went to college and I wanted to do social work because I don't feel like people should feel like unseen and like they don't matter in this world. And it was crazy for me to realize that it was the adults that did most of the harm. The kids weren't bad to me. Even after the fact, like it was adults that were like, let's not hang out with that girl. Like she's got some weird stuff going on at the school. Rather than adults in my community being like, oh my gosh, we've known you for our whole life. And like, I can't believe this happened. This should have never happened to you. I didn't get that. Like our kids aren't allowed to hang out with you anymore.
Yeah.
I really felt like I had done something wrong when I came forward. Felt like, oh my gosh, kids need to stop bullying. Adults are awful. Yeah. And they really make other kids feel bad when like they isolate you. And even just the things they say, like it's incredible to me. In my experience, adults are more bullies than kids ever thought of being, because the kids would have kept hanging out with me. The kids don't care.
So by the time you got to college, you said you had good grades throughout, even though you were kind of hanging out with older people and doing drugs a little bit and drinking. Were you still doing that when you got to college?
Oh, yeah. I never stopped partying. I mean, I had weeks where there were lulls, but I never really remember a time when I was on the straight and narrow. The whole time I was messing up. I was in a relationship with a dude that was 31 or something, 32, and I was 17, and that was an abusive relationship. He was bringing me drugs. Like that whole situation was not okay. But I learned a lot about social work.
It just seems so amazing to me. I mean, you've got these two sides of you going on.
Yeah, it is crazy. I've had to heal from quite a bit of shame that I realized that I carried as a social worker, as a good student, as somebody that looked one way. I always had this feeling of like what I was all about. they wouldn't like me. So carrying around all the time, like some shame about some part of your life, is a big burden to hold. And I didn't really realize that until long after I stopped kind of with the reckless behavior. But I graduated from social work school, and I had zero desire to work with foster and adopted kids. In fact, I remember women in my classes talking about, oh, we're going to go into adoption. And I was like, who chooses that? But the only job that was hiring during a recession was a post-adoption case manager. And it was like an hour away from my house. It was like $12.78 an hour. I took it because it was the only one hiring. It was like 6 months after I had graduated. And I didn't even know what that meant. But post-adoption case manager is basically when a foster parent wants to adopt and they sign on the dotted line and now they're an adoptive parent, they lose a lot of their services that they were getting when the kid was in the state's custody. Right, and now that they have the kid, they don't get those supports anymore. So then they're on their own. They feel isolated. They don't have the skills. They're not equipped with the therapeutic interventions that they need to be able to help these kids. And they give up. And so they would call me and say, we're ready to give this kid back. That was my job, to go in and be like, well, you can't do that. And I need to teach you therapeutic parenting techniques so that we can get you guys in an okay space and that this kid stays in your home. So I had impeccable supervisors, great people that are developmental trauma that happens to kids and how their brain isn't able to develop properly when they have trauma that happens to them, like from abuse or neglect in early development, like even in utero. That's the most vulnerable time for a brain to develop. So they stay in like fight or flight and survival mode. I learned everything there is to know about trauma. And the therapeutic technique that you're supposed to use to intervene with these kids were the exact principles of natural horsemanship. And I'm pretty sure I was the first person on this planet to put those two things together because they're pretty like niche. I was like, myself was like mind blown. Like, you're not supposed to be punitive with the horse. You're supposed to understand where they're coming from. Like, being punitive with kids with trauma doesn't work. They engage in a lot of power struggles. We have to get these kids and horses together. And I kept using analogies when I'd go to my home visits about horses and stuff, and people were looking at me funny. And I was like, someday I really want to be able to put these horses and kids together. But I didn't know how. And I was still engaging in destructive behaviors. I was a social worker and doing great work during the day, but I was still using on the weekends, and I was totally messed up. Like, wow. I wasn't proud of what I was doing. And like, I knew that I needed a way out. Like, I knew this wasn't my story, but I hadn't really done any of the healing from my past. I was still kind of in that community. And I had tried to do like, go to this in-treatment place. I'll do this, I'll do that. And like, nothing worked.
So, but you were trying.
I was trying. And like, I knew I wasn't one of those people that was in denial. Oh, I've got this. It was like, you're freaking on a one-way train to like,
yeah.
And amazingly, like, I kept my job, I kept my apartment, I kept my car, I kept like.
Did you have family in your ear saying, come on, get some help?
No. And had I would have been like, thank you for noticing. Like, I think I maybe just wanted somebody to be like, we see that you're fucked up. You know, like, we see that you're not being healthy.
Did they notice or did you hide it from them?
It wasn't hard to notice. But if you don't want to notice something, sure. I meet parents all the time that I'm like, your kid is out in the garage crushing up pills. Yeah. It's like, okay, he's not. Conversation done. So, I mean, like, I meet that over and over and over again. Typically women, to be honest, moms that don't want to believe.
Yeah.
So anyway, no, I didn't have family that was, I mean, I was on my own apartment and stuff too. So it wasn't like super evident, like right under their nose.
So how old are you at this point? Are you like 22-ish? You said you graduated from college?
Yeah, 22 to 24.
Uh-huh.
But I was starting to get a little reckless, and like my job was starting to be like, you're not like performing as you used to, whatever. And so I was like, I know how this ends. So I moved to Georgia. My dad lived in Atlanta, and I was like, I need to get out of here. I told my dad that I just wanted to move to Atlanta for no reason other than just like a change of scenery. But I moved to Atlanta. I was by myself. I didn't have friends there. So I was able to kind of get away from any of the influences I had. There wasn't places to go. I wasn't going and like partying.
You got out of a relationship with the older boyfriend.
Yeah, got out of that relationship and just left it all behind. That was really like the pivotal moment for me. And this is just how like God has worked in my life. I feel like God has used me when I have been in shambles. All of this was for even my horrible days, or like for this greater capacity for empathy. Like, you could tell me anything and nothing's going to shock me. Like, I know what it feels like to feel bad about yourself. I know what it feels like to not feel understood. I know what it feels like to just carry like shame and to not know your way out. It's interesting for me to look back and be like, wow, like I feel like God was building me for something. So I get to Georgia out of nowhere. My dad, and this is why like I attribute all this to God. I didn't create this. This came to me. My dad comes to me and is like, there's a Facebook ad that says some horse rescue is interested in having a volunteer match foster kids up with horses. And I'm like, oh, really? You know, like excited or whatever. And I go there and I start doing that. I was like, sure, I can do it. And I'm a social worker and I have all these ideas. So I start building that. It starts really taking off where I'm like matched up with kids 12 hours. And I had gotten a full-time job down there as like a patient care coordinator. I was at my full-time job plus going and hanging out with 12 different kids for 12 different hours of the week. So it started to get a little crazy.
So now this was a program that a foster care agency had?
No, it was like a horse rescue. Like they took in horses. Okay. Yeah. They had tried to do a few programs in the past, and then they had like put out an ad that they'd like to serve this population because they didn't really know how to do it. But I've got this, like I can do this whole deal. And all it was like hanging out with horses. The kids would like brush them, walk them around. It wasn't riding. It was just hanging out at the barn and being in the presence of a horse. So as my schedule started to get crazy and I was like, I can't serve all these kids. That's when community mentorship came into the plan. I'm just hanging out here and like creating a space for these kids. So if I can get community mentors to come and do the same thing, like I can serve unlimited kids, as many as there are mentors out there. I just did that. I developed a little PowerPoint training on trauma and what these kids go through and some good approaches that you should take with them. The mentors didn't have any horse experience. And I like asked a local church if I could use their like classrooms. Mentors showed up and I got my first little set of like 10 mentors and I matched them up with their kids and we were off and running. That's when people that were supportive of me at the farm came to me and were like, you could have your own nonprofit. I was totally like, had no clue that I could do that or like, but they knew enough to like, they became my board of directors and they were like, let's get the domain name. Let's submit our articles of incorporation. Let's do this thing. And they knew how. So I was like super stoked. But what I didn't realize was the farm that I was at, I didn't realize now, like, I'm just helping kids. But they're like, what do you mean? You're going to like take the program and do your own thing. And it was pretty bad when I said that I was going to do my own thing. Like they ended up writing bad blog posts about me.
So I'm a little confused. Sorry. The horse rescue, They were upset with you?
Mm-hmm.
So who were the people that became your board of directors?
Those were like volunteers at the horse farm that liked what I was doing.
Oh, okay. So they were other people who were working with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just did like volunteer work there, but they had a heart for foster and adopted kids. As in all business, there's just weird things that happen. You really need a lot of really clear expectations. And I was raising funds from donors and I was giving that money to the nonprofit with an expectation that I would be able to spend some of that money on the program and like supplies for the kids. And there wasn't clear like where the money was going. And so I was like, I wanted control of the funds we were soliciting from donors and I wanted to grow the program. So that's kind of where it came to like, I needed to create my own thing. But I realized like, no, you can't like go to a place and say like, I'm going to build this program for you. And then like the next day be like, cool, I'm glad it was successful. Now it's mine.
So the program that you were running, this nonprofit, it was still going through this rescue farm.
Initially, I told them, I'm starting a nonprofit. It's going to be called Stable Moments. I can keep doing it here, but I want it to be my own nonprofit. And I can give you a certain percentage for facility use and all of that. And they were like, we don't want your nonprofit running out of hours. So I said, okay, I guess I'll go get my own property. And then they were pissed at that because I was moving the program essentially.
Yeah.
And there was a whole bunch of backlash.
Sure. I bet there was. Yeah. I could understand that from both perspectives for sure. Did you eventually get your own property?
I got my own property. It was just renting a place that was like a barn. And there was a little apartment over the house. I didn't really have any income. Like we weren't going to charge program fees, but the board of directors had raised enough money to at least pay for like our first month. So I quit my job. Like I was just like, this will be a new adventure. And the worst thing that happens is at some point I'll have to get another job. And I wasn't afraid of that. I had a college degree. You can pick up social work jobs. So I quit my job and we started running the program out of this little property. And it was nice having our own property and it grew. But there were some like growing pains as far as mentors didn't know what to do. Like after a couple sessions, they're like, what are we even doing with these kids? And there were different situations that happened. Me realizing like, okay, we need policies, we need rules. Kids with trauma typically have food issues because they've been neglected and we're not going to have food here. We're not going to give the kids gifts. We're not going to transport the kids. So I was able to really learn through like trial and error, all the policies we would need. And then I was able to learn like all the structure the mentors need. So I had to develop a plan of care for each kid that was color-coded with the life skills they were working on. And I developed activities that were also color-coded that would work on life skills. So the mentor could come to the barn, say, my kid's a blue and purple kid, and I'm going to grab an activity that's matched with a blue and purple, and we're off and running. And it had what they should do, what questions they should ask to open up a discussion. I did not set out to like, I'm going to make this really structured program. I just realized through a lot of error.
Yeah. What year was this that you were doing all of this?
2014 was the year that we got our own place. After that lease was up, we moved into another place, and it was a really close friend of mine, actually, and a person that volunteered a lot for the organization. She was like, I'm going to buy a farm and you guys can rent the barn part of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be our dream situation. This is a really good friend of mine. And it was for a while, like we were able to really grow the program and things were going great. But I really didn't have that much money. Like I had to pay $2,500 a month just for rent. And then I needed to pay for feed, which is on the horse's care and all that. It was really like living on a prayer. A certain volunteer hooked me up with the food bank so that I could start getting some food and not have to like ask my board of directors every time I needed food. It was a lot of sacrifice. And I felt like a lot of times I was like, is this really sustainable?
Yeah.
It was taxing work.
But we're talking now. So I'm guessing that at some point it became sustainable and it became like something turned around, right?
Yeah, well, so everything that has happened through a lot of pain. But my friend who owned the property and I, like, that started to get a little weird. So I went to a conference, a Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship. I'm certified through them and they are, international. So I went to their national conference and I spoke about my model. And I was like, hopefully you guys can help kids too. And like, I was told by a lot of people, they're like, do not give this away, publish it and sell it because it's really valuable information. So then I came home from that pretty stoked. I was validated in that there might be like an opportunity. I've always been a global thinker. Serving 25 kids on one property isn't as appealing to me. Like I would rather scale always. It just so happens that I was going to start working on the scalability of it in the book, and my relationship with this, I didn't feel like some of the things were fair, and it was just both sides trying to come to an agreement, and we couldn't. We ended up terminating the agreement, but we terminated the lease in the middle of a session year. And I was literally like, okay, I need to find a new property. Like, I can't not serve these kids. These kids are going to be heartbroken. Like, what am I supposed to do? Just tell them that, like, sorry, we're gone. Like, the program's done. Like, it was really an emotional time for me. I tried everything to, like, just serve these kids. And I feel like I put 3 years into this at this point, and I'm about to do more harm than had I just not started. I just felt super defeated. And I was looking for another program or another like facility, and I realized I'm just going to have to let it go. I didn't have money to go like pay another down payment or whatever for that. So it was about that time that my boyfriend, or my husband now, but my boyfriend then, he is a cop that wanted to be a teacher. So he got a teaching certification, but he got it online from a Florida school, and he thought that it was reciprocal to Georgia. But when he graduated, he realized you can only use it in Florida. So he was like, so could we move to Florida? And I just shut down my program, and I'm like, I'm down for whatever. I'll move to Florida. And I was really at like I hadn't had a normal, typical job in 3 years. And so we moved here, and I was going to get a full-time job. But I also gave myself deadline to write the book by August, and we had moved here in May. So I wrote the book, went back to the PATH conference the next year. Everybody loved it, and I sold a lot of books, and I've been selling books. But what I realized from that was people needed more than that. They could read a book and kind of do it, but they're like, we don't really know how to develop plans of care. We don't really know how to develop, do the intake assessments or train mentors. That's where certification trainings came out of, and like the license agreement so that people can be Stable Moments locations.
Yes, I was going to ask you about certifications and things like that.
Yeah.
Like if you had any certifications in place for people that you work with.
Yes, you can get in, like you can buy the book, and it literally is like, I don't hold anything back. If you feel like just reading a $30 book and going and starting like OBS mentoring, you can. But a lot of people need more help than that. So then you can go to intensive. You learn everything you need to learn to become a program director. And it also gives you access to an annual membership that we have, member portal where they can like download all of our administrative assets, all of our marketing assets, promo videos. They have a community forum, like everything that they need to be a part of the Stable Moments community. If they want to go a step further, they can sign into a license agreement that lets them use the Stable Moments brand. And basically that agreement is just for me to ensure integrity. So if they're going to say they're a Stable Moments program, they actually are giving each kid a mentor and a plan of care, and they're using our activities, and they're doing it the way that we say it should be done. I realized, my job is not to like muck stalls and match one-on-one mentors up. My job is to be the administrative support for the site. I consult them, and I do member calls once a month, and I make new content all the time.
How many locations are we talking about now?
So we have 15 now. Last year was the first year I did certification trainings, and I only did 2 because I had a baby last year.
Congratulations.
This year, thanks. So this year we're scheduled to do 4 trainings, and so we'll get more locations there. But what I'm super excited about is I've gotten feedback that the critical piece of this isn't necessarily the horse. It's the mentorship. There's a lot of kids that come and like they're okay with the horse, but like they really just want to like spend time doing some like non-equine activities like arts and crafts or sports. Half of our activities are non-equine activities because I basically can take any activity and tell you how to do it in a therapeutic way. Like if you're going to sit down and make a bracelet, you can make the bracelet for someone, and we can make up a plan of how to build a relationship, and there's kind of trauma-informed ways to do anything. With that said, I've realized I can branch out to non-equine places, community organizations, schools, and churches. Our new direction is to do the program without the horses.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like, you went into it with a passion for horses. Really, maybe not so much the foster system but it's kind of changed, right? It's kind of turning a little bit where you have equal passions now?
Yeah, well, and I would say that like if I'm completely honest, now that you ask, if somebody asks me what's your purpose or your calling, I need to figure out how to serve kids that have experienced early developmental trauma. Yeah. And I feel a huge, and it could be horses. It doesn't even need to be Stable Moment. I'm so open to like whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that's my deal. And that's why I just started the Stable Moments podcast. My thought is that the community needs to get involved. There's no option for me or you to get involved with foster kids unless we're going to foster a kid. Never mind. Like you've already lost people because that's a huge, huge commitment, right? Even if you have a huge, huge heart for these kids, it's a huge commitment. And you don't really know how to support the families because you don't know who they are or whatever. But this mentorship piece, it allows everybody to play an active role in the lives of these kids. Through my trainings and stuff or learning about trauma, they start to understand these kids from a better perspective. And then they are able to support the families more because they understand what they're going through. I personally feel like it's time to like take back some of this broken system and as a community more step up.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like you are really on like the verge of another phase of this whole endeavor. So it's cool to talk to you at this point.
Yeah.
I would love to check back in with you in a couple of years and see where everything's gone.
Yeah, I'm excited. I will just keep walking through doors. Like I do feel like very focused. I do think that a lot of people make the mistake of, especially nonprofits, which I'm an LLC now, so I'm not a nonprofit, but I think a lot of people make the mistake of like, we just want to help everyone. And like they get willy-nilly with their mission. So I hope people don't think that I'm super open in the fact that like I'm changing things up and diluting it. But I feel like I can do this with or without the horses. I've had so many people ask, this would be great for kids that have a divorced parent, or this would be great for a kid that lost a parent. I love the idea of serving them, but it's not what my program does because I have stayed laser focused.
Yeah, that sounds like the key. And it sounds like over the past few years, you've really narrowed down your focus. And I think that's it's going to prove to be successful for you. I need to ask whether or not you're clean now. You got married, and he used to be a cop. So did he arrest you?
He arrested me, and that we lived happily ever after.
Did he really arrest
you? No.
Oh.
I don't think that he would have dated me. So yes, I did. I left the partying in Vermont, and I haven't looked back. But I mean, it was years of like. I mean, I'm still working on it. I'm clean and sober. I don't do any like self-harm behaviors, and that's been. I don't even know how many years now. 2013. That's 7 years.
Yeah,
long time. But it was like through this whole process, I've learned like my value and like my place in the world and like my purpose. And I feel like I needed to do everything I did. And I needed to go through all the evolutions of myself and the program to be able to serve all the people that I do. Sometimes like people just talk to me. They just talk to me as this like founder, and nobody knows like the backstory. This is the first time I've told it. I give myself a few extra pats on the back for like, holy shit, like it's been a ride.
Yeah, and you know what? Like once I think you started focusing on yourself, that's when you focused on your business and what you wanted to do with it. And once you took care of yourself and got yourself to a place that you were happy with, that's when you can really move on and get your business off and running and really narrow your focus onto what you want to do. And I really do think you're on the verge of going to the next level with this thing.
I actually feel extremely privileged. My purpose was like whacked over the top of my head, and it was like, there's no me not doing this. It's like on a roll, and I'm just like holding on and making shit happen during the day, but like it's going to happen. And I feel really grateful because I'm in a bunch of communities with people that are trying to do side hustles or whatever. And people are like, I have no clue what my purpose is. I have no clue what my passion is. And, they're in the like exploration stage. And I realize how much of a privilege it is to know your passion, know your purpose, and to not pursue it. That's insanity to me. Yeah. And nothing matters, like, at the end of the day, except for, like, people will ask me, like, Rebecca, why do you give all this away? Or, like, why are you making time for this? And it's like, this is not work. To me, like, success is, it's not working less. It's you're working in the flow. Yeah. So you're just doing what you love.
And you're doing what you feel like you have to do.
Yeah.
There's no other option. A lot of the people that I've spoken to, they just can't see themselves doing anything else. Mm-hmm. They can't go sit at a desk at a corporate job or whatever, because that's just not in their DNA. It's not who they are. It's not where their focus is. Mm-hmm. And to be able to find what that focus is and what that passion is and to go out and make it happen is very inspirational to me. And that's why I do this, because I'm being inspired by all of you people, because I'm kind of in that exploration phase. Like I'm 41. I don't know what the hell my purpose is. I'm kind of at a weird transitional point. I need to hear your stories to fuel my own inspiration.
And then you get to do it with so many people. And then, like, you would never get this opportunity. We would never speak. Like, how would we ever get this conversation? I would never have told my story maybe to anyone. Like, and I don't want it to be about me, but I love it. I love the connection. And yeah, I'm a podcast lover.
I am too. I love this type of format, though, where we can talk to people who are not celebrities or are not well known. But it's because everybody has a story and everybody's out there hustling and grinding away at something. And I just think like bringing these stories out can be very inspirational to others who are in that exploration phase.
And for people that like are grinding it out, like, I haven't quit my day job yet. Like, there's a lot of things I need to accomplish before I can do that. I know I'll get there, but like, I listen to like How I Built This on NPR. Like there's other people like out there in this grinding it out phase, or there's other people that followed their passion or did the things, because that can be isolating too. Like, to be honest, you see a bunch of people just sitting around not following their passion, and they're like doing their day-to-day. They're like, this is what life is. Like they've just like kind of settled. So it's hard to be somebody that wants more because you're isolated.
Yeah. But, you also have to realize that you're among the incredible lucky few who actually know what your passion is. And you've got the opportunity to make it happen. And you've already got the building blocks. So you're there.
Brick by brick, man.
Yeah.
You'll get it done.
Hey, I really appreciate you taking some time today.
Yeah, this was great.
Well, super nice talking to you.
You too. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Thank you to Rebecca for coming on the show and agreeing to talk to me about her very personal story, her past, her drug and alcohol abuse, her sexual abuse, the trauma that she went through, but how she turned it around and how she really is doing something wonderful with her life and with her organization to help these kids who need help. I appreciate Rebecca's time, and I hate Skype. One more time for good measure. I hate Skype. If you have a story you want to share with me, reach out to me directly, caughtbyhappy@gmail.com, or you can send me a DM on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter, or wherever I am at caughtbyhappy. I would love to hear from you. Love to know what's going on in your life. You can also leave me a rating and a review on your preferred podcast platform. Those ratings and reviews just help me grow the audience and help me keep doing what I'm doing. And if you like what I'm doing, then help me out. Okay, everybody, thanks for listening. Caught by Happy is a production of Harrington Communications Consultants. If you need any help with your content marketing, social media, public relations, any kind of digital communications whatsoever, just hit me up at harringtoncc.net.